Okay, so I'd like to do the share in dedication to two people. The Refuah Shalema, full health for Yaakov ben Bassa. And Kevin, you've got a health dedication as well.
Ben Leah.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Aryeh Leib ben Leah.
Perfect. Okay, you're going to start
Okay.
before I give the Gemara share. Go for it.
Yeah, but I'll be very quick. This week's parsha, Parshat Shmini, which actually means Shmini. I don't know if the word shemen could be oil, or it could be 8, the word shmone, but that's okay, that's just a side issue. But it discusses kashrut and what you can eat, what you can't eat, and eating you can only eat fish with scales, and you can only eat animals, land animals that chew the cud and have split hooves. Some animals, such as a pig, split hooves but doesn't chew the cud, and certain other animals also, so they don't qualify, and birds that are not birds of prey. And the reason why it stresses this is that if one eats tray food, it takes away the it takes away the ability. It takes away our level of holiness, and it takes away our ability to discern. I missed the. Oh, there we go. Impedes the last thing. It impedes a person's ability to elevate and sanctify himself, and contaminates the neshama in ways that no physical examination can decipher, and creates a barrier between the Jew and his perception of Hashem. So that's what I mean. Tray food does. It sounds quite serious. So if we should obviously strive to avoid eating non-kosher as much as possible.
I agree.
Okay.
Just one thing, incidentally, is that I remember a secular person once saying to me that we do it for health reasons, and since shellfish has iodine and it's not good to mix meat and milk because of lactose intolerance and certain other things, that's the reason why we do it. And I explained to him that the reason why it's physically unhealthy to eat treif is a spiritual manifestation in a physical format, meaning whenever there is in life a physical result that we have in the physical world, it's born out of a perception problem and an implementation problem and an attitude problem, meaning often every problem that we have has its solution within an energy source or a spiritual source. Does that make sense? In other words, the physical manifestation is often the result that all it does is illustrate a spiritual reality. It's not the physical getting sick of the iodine poisoning shellfish is why we don't eat treif. It's physically unhealthy for us because it's spiritually toxic for us. The physical manifestation is just an eminence of the spiritual higher reality. That's all. That's all. It's looking at it through a different perspective. What it does do is it creates a clipper. Like if an animal isn't shechted properly, it creates almost an obstruction of how we perceive a spiritual reality and creates a lot less sensitivity. So, I think somebody once asked the Rebbe, do you suggest I first keep Shabbos or keep kosher? And he suggested first keeping kosher because it creates a spiritual sensitivity in a realm we can't perceive. Exactly as you said. And then obviously there are degrees of kashrut, etc. There are many people that won't eat in a home that they don't keep Shabbos, even though they say they're kosher, because it often falls onto one another. I mean, a friend of mine said to me, why won't you eat in my home if I'm getting you kosher stuff? I said, if you get it in the containers, I'm happy to. But if you're going to use your oven and you don't acknowledge that Hashem created the world and runs the world because you don't observe the Sabbath and says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, if there's some spiritual defectiveness that is something that you're not sensitive to, how do I know that you're aware of the halachic rules of kashrut? can you tell me some of the halachic rules? And they got offended. And it's fine. They can get offended.
They wouldn't take them seriously. That's the thing.
Well, that's exactly the point. I think Kevin said it perfectly, is that if they don't take Shabbos seriously, if this gets a bit mixed up with that, they wouldn't take it seriously. I think Kevin said it in the most simple, direct way. Exactly.
It happened to me once. Just one more. So you want to say something, Arthur?
Art, what do you want to say?
I want to say something. Okay, so you're talking about spiritual and physical. Okay, yeah, obviously that's a nice. Think about this. When we get sick physically, we then pray spiritually to Hashem to heal us.
Yeah, we're
trying to get this as it's linked together. So your spiritual and your physical are always connected, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah,
think about that. You always you don't go to your doctor and say you go to your doctor and say, and you say, Hashem, please help the doctor heal me. You know?
That's the right
attitude. Power.
That's exactly the right attitude. Exactly correct. All right, so we're going to make everybody's tired from what I understood from Arthur, especially Arthur's been dealing with patients.
Every day, busy day.
Yeah, he's patient.
Every day from 7 this morning back to back, 3 people back to back. So,
all right, let me just keep the shares like my heart, short. Okay, so if one stole a lamb from a flock and returned it without notifying the owner, and it subsequently died or was stolen, the thief is responsible for it. If the owner was not aware of the theft or its return and he counted the flock and found that it was complete, the thief is not liable for any future mishap. Okay, just giving you a bit of revision very quickly. So what is this pertaining to? Is that at the end of the day, what does it mean the thief acquired? He acquires it in the sense that he became responsible for it until it's returned to the owner. And if anything should happen to it, he has to replace it. Okay? So what does our Mishnah teach? That returning it to the owner's domain without his knowledge does not constitute a valid act of return in certain circumstances. And it remains in the possession of the thief. And therefore, after it's been returned, if there are any mishaps and there's consequentially a court case, might subsequently have to suffer and have to pay for something even though he returned it. They don't all hold the same level of stringency in terms of opinion. So we're just going to see where it actually plays out. So I'm just going to give you the bottom line of the 4 Amoraic rulings, because before we go to a Tanaic ruling, the Amoraim came afterwards. And what is the ruling? About what constitutes the proper return of a stolen article, which exempts the thief from paying for any harm that it might subsequently suffer should, once it being returned, it disappears again or dies a miserable death. So it's a way that legally the thief can get off the hook, and spiritually too. So each of the rulings requires a slightly different interpretation of the Mishnah. So the first opinion we have is Rav, R-A-V. Now Rav's opinion, if you remember, was measure for measure. If the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, its return requires the awareness, meaning the thief must tell the owner that the article has been returned. Measure for measure. The owner's aware, then its return requires the owner's awareness. Okay? Now, we said that there are 3 ways that the owner becomes aware. I know Arthur's out of it. Can I ask Gavin or Kevin, what are the 3 ways an owner can become aware?
Well, the theft.
Well, aware that his sheep's missing.
Okay, I can say something. Gavin?
I can say 2 ways. If you can say the third way, Kevin, I've got 2 ways.
The one is he does a stock take.
Yeah, stock count. And then counting the money is the second one.
Excellent.
And then the third one is stock counting the money.
No, Gavin, it's they're 2 the corollary of each other. Meaning, if a seller or a coin is missing, you have to count the money. Stock take applies to livestock or goods, whereas counting money is money. But it's the same concept.
You might sell those sheep, but you could be a shortfall on both, on the stock and on the if you're selling a sheep, you can be short on the cash and on the stock side.
No, I understand, but that's not what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara is using two different examples from the Tanaic dispute. It says, listen, the Tanaic dispute that occurs earlier, the Amorite dispute is over sheep. The Tanaic dispute is either goods or cash. So either one, when you count the money, you know the right amount is returned. If it's money that was stolen. So we said last time, if you've got money in a drawer and you've got domestic workers and gardeners and other people, and you say, guys, I don't want to fire anybody who puts anybody through a polygraph test, just return it from where it's disappeared. There was 400 Rand. Just make sure it comes back. I don't want to know who did it. So that is return of funds to know that the accounting is done correctly. The separate issue is if stock goes missing, either a fork or a knife and a cutlery set or a sheep goes missing. But it's all part of stock taking and checking that what was dysregulated became regulated and can be accounted for. I'm just telling you in terms of the Gemara. I know what Gavin's talking about. That's a different issue. That's in terms of a trial balance sort of system where there's stock goes out. We're not talking about that. We're keeping it just
because money goes missing. I mean, that's how you tell if there's a problem in your business. If there's either money going missing or if stock's going missing.
This is not an insight.
For that type, for a product.
In this particular case, we're talking about either a thief or robber or custodian. So it's not a person in your business, but Gavin's 100% correct. So Gavin and Kevin, let's call it either recounting of the money or stock take to see that the rectification. What's the other two ways?
What about admission of guilt? Did you feel bad?
Yes, so that's a rectification when it's returned. But we know the two other ways is that when you see the person run away with your goods, when you see somebody, not at the point of return. How do you know it's missing? Well, you can do a stock take.
How do you know it's missing? Yeah, if you physically see it, or if the animal's distinctive, then you can maybe tell.
Okay, so that's a different thing. Upon its return, you can see without a stock take. So Gavin did remember a good point. So bottom line, the three ways of awareness is you see somebody driving away with your Porsche. It's an excellent way to determine that. The other way is that somebody rode off with your donkey, a third party confirmation that witnesses came and said somebody stole one of your goods or your livestock or money or whatever the case may be. So it's third party, it's direct witnessing yourself and a stock take or accounting of money to see there's a deficiency or a loss. Those are the three ways to become aware of the problem. How do you rectify the solution? According to Rav, if the owner is aware that his stock or money is missing, its return requires the awareness of the thief. The thief has to tell him. If it was stolen without the owner's awareness, it suffices that his counting of his possessions after the article has been returned exempts the thief from liability. So if the thief doesn't want to do jail time, or the guy that owns the farm is a bit of a breaker and the thief is a bit of a nerd and doesn't want to have his face smashed in, Gavin, according to Rob, if the owner's not aware that something disappeared, as long as the thief brings it back before the stock take, then all is good. All is good. There's no issue at all. Okay, very straightforward. That's Rav's opinion. Now, who does Rav always argue with, Kev?
With every other Rav out there.
That and Shmuel.
Perfect. So you have Abaya and Rava, and you have Rav and Shmuel. That's excellent, Gav. Okay. So what's the dissenting view? It's always going to be Shmuel. So Shmuel says whether the article was stolen with the owner's awareness or without his awareness, his counting of the possessions exempts the thief from liability. So according to Shmuel, he said it doesn't matter whether the owner's aware or not aware. At the end of the day, the thief can return it and make good as long as the owner redoes his stock count. Then that suffices because everything adds up. Nothing's missing. And according to this approach, when the Mishnah states, and he counted the flock and found that it was complete, the thief is exempt, it refers to the entire Mishnah. So stock take is perfect. Now, there's a third opinion, and that's Rav Yochanan, who said if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, his counting of his possession exempts the thief from liability. Meaning, if he sees somebody run away with the sheep, and he says, I'm sure that was mine, or a third party says your sheep are, one of the sheep was stolen, we saw somebody scurry away with it, or there was an initial stock take and there's awareness that way. Either way, when the owner does another stock take, if all has been returned, it exempts the thief. That's when the owner is aware. The second stock take clears his name if it was returned. But if it was stolen without the owner's awareness, even counting is not necessary. Why? Because if you don't know anything's missing, why would you have to count it? It's fine. According to Hashem, in his blessed mercy, it's fine from a spiritual point of view and a legal point of view. It's fine. You've returned it. There's nothing further to discuss. You don't even have to do a stock take. And according to this approach, when the Mishnah states, and he counted the flock and found that it was complete, the thief is exempt, it refers to the first clause, meaning at the point where the owner knew that one of the animals was stolen, redoing a stock count suffices. And if he doesn't know it's missing, you don't have to do a stock count, because why would he do another stock count if he doesn't know it's missing? Now, there's a fourth opinion, which seems like a contradiction to Rav, which is Rav Chisda. And he said, if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, his counting of the possessions exempts the thief from liability. Okay? If it was stolen without his awareness, its return requires awareness. In other words, the thief must tell the owner that the article has been returned. And according to this approach, when the Mishnah states, and he counted the sheep and found that it was complete, the thief is exempt, it refers to the first clause, where, if you remember the first clause in which the owner was aware that one of the animals was taken. So this is completely opposite to Rav. Why? Because Rav said, if the owner was aware, when you return it, you have to make him aware. If the owner was not aware, stock take will suffice. Rav Chisda is saying the opposite. If the owner is aware, it exempts the thief just to do a stock take. If the owner was not aware, you have to inform the owner. So why? So Rava said, R-A-V-A, what's the reason of Rav Chisda? Because a stolen animal requires extra protection and supervision, since he got in the habit of taking steps outside. Meaning that once the sheep has been separated from the flock, the animal is more likely than others to wander off on its own, and as such it requires a greater degree of safeguarding than before. If therefore the owner was unaware of the thief or the theft, and the sheep is returned without his knowledge, it wouldn't suffice for him to merely count his flock, because even if he does count it and find it complete, he won't know that the sheep was ever stolen, and he will consequently fail to provide it with the greater protection and supervision it now requires. So since the thief has made the animal less secure than it was before the theft, he has not returned it in an adequate manner. His only option is to explicitly inform the owner of the animal's return. However, if the owner was aware of the theft, in which case his counting of the flock would tell him that the lamb was returned, he already knows that it requires greater protection, and the thief has performed a valid act of return even without notifying the owner. Okay. So the Gemara says,
No.
What were you going to
No,
say?
do you remember Sergeant Bilko when they were doing stock take and using mirrors and moving things around, and the guy didn't know that the stock was missing? Can you do that?
Sergeant Bilko, was that the red line, the green? What was it called?
No. When Sergeant Bilko was the one with Steve Martin, and he was the army guy, and he was gambling and all that stuff, and moving the stuff around. They came to check him, and he was like, had mirrors up, so it looked like more.
Oh, cute, man.
Was there,
yeah, I remember that in the 80s.
Like, yeah, so if you do that, is that allowed? Because everything's there when they counted it, but, you know. Oh, but it was funny. Just thought I'd bring that up to cheer you up. Okay, carry on.
That's cute, mate. Guys, it actually wasn't in the 80s. It was made in 1996. It had Dan Aykroyd and Steve Martin.
How'd you remember that?
Well, you know what? Because you always remember movies.
But the year, how'd you remember the year?
Because I know who I was dating at the time.
And
But Damon,
was that fact of paramount importance to you, Damon?
You got to understand, Damon had a book on all the movies.
I had a
every
book.
actor out there.
Yeah, I had a book on every movie, every actor, and it was a compendium, and it came out by Mick Marshall. My mom had it.
Now, Damon, did you get my joke? I said, was that fact of paramount importance to you?
I said Paramount Studios. I got it. I got it. And Yishakar, Kev, I haven't lived properly until I heard this very statement. So the Gemara notes an internal contradiction in the teachings of Rava, because Rava is explaining Rav Chisda. So it said, did Rava really say this? Because Rava ruled elsewhere that in the case of this man who saw his fellow lift a sheep from his flock with intent to steal it, and the owner yelled at the thief, and the thief panicked, threw it down, but the owner didn't know whether he returned the animal or whether he just fled and didn't return it. And it subsequently died or was stolen afterwards, and then the thief is responsible for it. So this would seem that since the owner was aware, the stock taking alone didn't exemplify the thief, and therefore seems a contradiction with Rava explaining Rav Chisda. And we're saying it's actually no contradiction, because it says this ruling applies only where the owner did not count the flock, meaning if he was aware that the animal was missing, the thief is still responsible until he counts the flock and sees that the animal has been returned, and therefore would cease to be responsible for the stolen animal. And therefore Rava's ruling is consistent in both cases, that if the owner is aware, the stock take is deemed sufficient. Now, the question I have on Rava is, well, why is it the thief's fault if the owner fails to do a stock take and then it goes missing? And the answer to it, which I thought about, is quite clearly, if the thief broke the law and was wrong, the law is not there to protect him, Gavin. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not primarily there to protect him. It's there to protect the owner. It's different in the law of damages. So, Gavin, you remember in Bava Kamma in the beginning, we learned about damages, that it had to have a balance between whom you damaged and the amount you had to pay, that it wouldn't impoverish you, and that there would be adequate compensation for the person you damaged. It would look at the middle ground, because damage has to be compensated for. However, it has to be reasonable, that it doesn't impoverish the damager. Yeah. Why? Because it's not an act of breaking the law. Sorry, I thought all I was saying is it's not an act of breaking the law. We're not that merciful.
Yeah, so like damage is normally unintentional, but being a thief is intentional.
Exactly, I couldn't have said it better. The unintentional nature of it means we look after the party that did it b'shoigeg, inadvertently or unintentionally. We often use this example about with a homicide. If you come home and find your wife having an affair, you empty the gun of bullets in your wife and her lover, which was your best friend, they might give you quite a lot of time in prison, but it's very different than if you were having an affair with a wife and you wanted to collect the life assurance money and you got rid of the husband. Intent is everything. Arthur's correct. So the Gemara now addresses Rav's ruling that if the owner was aware of the theft, the thief must notify the owner of the item's return. And if the owner never became aware of the theft, his counting suffices. So we're saying, hang on, let's go back to Rav. And Rav said, mida keneged mida. If there's no awareness with the owner, a stock take will suffice. If the owner becomes aware that it's missing, the owner has to be informed by the thief upon its return. Now, by the way, guys, the thief doesn't have to go up to the owner and say, listen, I returned your flock, because he might be scared. And they never had telephones in those days. It could have been that he sent a message where there was a greengrocer, and he said, listen, I heard from such and such your animal was stolen in a bar. A friend of mine told me that there were a couple of people. He must do a stock take. That suffices. You don't have to put yourself in harm. So it says that did Rav really make the statement? Because if we look elsewhere in the Gemara, Rav said if the thief returned the stolen lamb to the owner's flock in the desert, he has fulfilled his obligation. So he's saying, hang on. But in that case, there was neither notification nor counting. In other words, you're putting it in an environment where you can't notify the owner, or the owner's not there to do a stock take. And Rav said it suffices to fill your obligation if you return the animal to the flock in the desert, because the original owner has got multiple, what do you call it, farms, but he doesn't frequent the area. And the Gemara answers there's no inconsistency with Rav, because Rav Hanan Bar Abba said that Rav agrees that in that case of a spotted lamb, and this is where Gavin had a great memory, an animal that has been distinguished by its markings needs neither notification nor counting. So, Gavin, this was at your point. I was very impressed that you remember. If it's an unusual thief and it has distinctive features, the shepherd of the flock in the desert realized that it was disappeared, and you don't even have to do a stock take. If every sheep was white and that was the black sheep, or it's got spots, if it disappears, you know it's missing. You don't even have to do a stock take. And therefore, the owner is aware automatically. You don't have to inform the owner. He's aware on that basis. And if it's returned, there doesn't have to be a stock take because the black sheep is back amongst the white sheep. So therefore, Rav is consistent with Rav. Okay, so let's deal with a new issue. Guys, am I making sense to you?
Can you take the black sheep and replace it with the white sheep? I know it's a bit of a joke, but it's not meant as a joke. It'd be quite tricky if you did that.
Yeah. I don't know what you do today with BE and affirmative action.
Maybe for those reasons. That's why you're
talking about in the same family, Gavin.
Yeah, in the same family. No, I'm just saying if you stole the black sheep and then you replace it with the white sheep, are you off the hook or not? And no, these are like, it's going over and above. Just leave it.
All right. So listen, guys.
On the government policy, Gavin.
I know, I'm just thinking a bit too deeply. Listen, carry on. Sorry.
No. So listen, before we go to the tonight dispute, which is going to get rather complicated, I thought we'd end tonight a little early.
All right, I appreciate it. I'm destroyed.
Going back a few minutes, are you tired, Gavin? And Arthur also. And Damon's also probably.
I've been working the whole day. I've just been working.
So a thief, I don't remember if it was Rava or Rav or Shmuel, was discussing, which you discussed earlier, if a thief has the stolen animal in his possession and it gets stolen from him, why should he even consider reporting it to the authorities? It's not, I mean, he stole it. That's the biggest chutzpah. I mean,
no, we're not saying that. We're not saying that. I'm pleased you raised this. What we are saying is the thief will still be responsible. Let me give you a very simple example.
Yeah.
You have Reuven, Shimon and Reuven. So Reuven steals a sheep from Shimon. Now, people come up to Shimon and say they noticed Reuven walking with a sheep on his back that belonged to Shimon and walked out of his field. Now, what happens is if Reuven in the middle of the night felt bad after he sobered up and returned the animal to Shimon's sheep pen, and it was there, but there'd been no stock take, and the animal subsequently escaped again because it was used to wandering off now because it had been separated from the flock, or it died of syphilis, or it had head trauma, whatever happens. At that point, Shimon is going to sue Reuven and say, well, you say you returned it. I don't know you returned it. I know you stole it. They came to tell me at the pub you got fraught drunk and you stole it. Who knows you returned it? We didn't do a stock take. So then Reuven is still responsible legally to replace that sheep. So if Reuven wants to be off the hook, when he returns it to Shimon, he has to take certain measures. The right sort of measure to take is an anonymous, if you don't have a phone call, figure out some way to leave an anonymous message after you return the sheep and say, I stole your sheep. It's got a green tag on its foot. Do stock take, it's there. And you also could probably go to the court and say, listen, I did steal it. and I've got a witness to show I returned it, and cover yourself. That's what we say. Not if it disappears in the thief's possession, but once it returns, if something's happened to it, the thief can still
In
be
the process of
responsible.
him returning it to the rightful owner.
No, not in the process of returning it. Once it's been returned, if it hasn't been acknowledged that there was a return, the thief is still sitting with the problem. And I think it's an excellent
Confirmed.
question.
Like it's got to be like confirmed, yes.
Yes.
Well, the thief should go physically see the owner.
Well, you
and
would,
give
because if the owner was 6'7" and worked out at gym 2 hours a day, and I said to the guy, listen, I'm terribly sorry, but this is what I wouldn't want to be wrapped around a pole. I might
Then-
put a green scarf around the sheep and make an anonymous phone call and say, go look, there's and I've got a witness, Sipo, that saw me bring it back, and I'm going out of town for a couple of weeks.
Because so you wouldn't have to have any, or because basically he would be, if the thief, if the owner was that 6 foot muscular guy who's quite a breaker, the thief would be very sheepish about meeting him face to face to return it, Gavin.
He'd be an ox to do it. You're right.
Exactly, yeah.
Basically, you'd be a coward.
Coward.
Okay.